Now my mic is on. What's going on, everybody? It is yours truly, TJ Jones. And thank you very much for tuning in to another edition of the Unapologetic Podcast. And if this is your first time checking out the Unapologetic Podcast, thank you so much. This is live, man. So y'all seen me plugging up my microphone because I realized that, honestly, I was just basically talking to myself at that particular time. But flying solo today on this edition of the Unapologetic Podcast. And there's a lot of things in the world that we need to discuss, a lot of things that I want to talk about. August has been a really good month for yours truly, man. I mean, I've been really grinding. And honestly, I'm kind of exhausted, man, but I'm a good exhausted. You know, like when you really feel like you're putting your best foot forward to make your dreams a reality. That's kind of what I'm on right now. You know, I just made up in my mind that I am just going to really put the foot to, you know what I'm saying, put the foot to my faith and the pedal to the metal. And, honestly, August has been one of the best years of my life. And I know if you're probably looking at the title of the Unapologetic Podcast, it says 2020, is it the worst year ever? And, even the topic is throw 2020 in the trash, because it just seems like it's just one tragedy after another in 2020. I mean, one tragedy after another, man. Just found out that Chadwick Boseman died. That was just so awful, man. So I was just finishing up doing a podcast. I was on the Saints podcast. Some of you probably know, I do a sports podcast as well. But I was doing a sports podcast. Shouts out to my guy CB, and we were just finishing up. And one of his co-hosts actually just informed us that Chadwick Boseman died. And I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. First off, I didn't even know anything was going on with Chadwick Boseman. I didn't. The fact that find out that he actually died of colon cancer was just a shock. And not just to me, but to a lot of people. And the thing about Chadwick Boseman, that made him so remarkable was he wasn't one of those guys that wanted to be a victim. Like some people, they get sick and they want the whole world to feel sorry for them. They parade themselves around sometimes, I'm saying, they want the world to, give them sympathy or whatever. But Chadwick Boseman wasn't like that. He continuously worked throughout the entire time. I mean, he was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer in about, 2016. And he continued to work, and unfortunately, the cancer started to become more aggressive, and he went stage 4. And, it just took a turn for the worse. And we lost one of the best actors in Hollywood. Notice I didn't say black actor. We lost one of the best actors in Hollywood. Chadwick Boseman was definitely on the rise. He was one of those guys that a lot of people considered. Now I will put him in a category of being black, but people considered him to be the next Denzel Washington. I did. I really thought that Chadwick Boseman reached his stride. I mean, we know about some of the biopics that he was actually in. He played Jackie Robinson. He played Thurgood Marshall. He played James Brown, man. Shouts out to a lot of the people that I actually went to college with, man, that were actually in that movie. My guy, Rob Demery. Rob Demery was actually in that movie. Sierra, I'm saying, shout out to Sierra. I mean, just a countless of, people that I knew were actually in that Get On Up movie. So, I mean, the fact that I envy them, what I'm saying, because they had an opportunity to actually be, up close and personal with this guy. Everybody that talks about Chadwick Boseman says that he was an incredible guy. They talk about how humble he was. They talk about how you literally had to pull him away from people that walked up to him and wanted to, put their hands across their chest and, to symbolize Wakanda forever. Like, he was so embedded into, that those roles and how they affected people. And, I just got a lot of doggone respect for that guy, And it's unfortunate because he was actually one of my favorite actors out, I can remember, like, this is so crazy. A couple of days ago, I was actually riding in the car by myself, and, the James Brown character actually popped into my head. Like I think the scene where Chadwick Boseman, when he was playing James Brown, and I guess like Mr. Bud, what I'm saying, him and Mr. Bird had a falling out, and he came to Mr. Bird's house to give him 2 tickets to his concert. And I was just thinking like that scene just popped into my head, like how just embedded he was into that character, like him walking down the street with all the rings on his finger and looking like a 1970 pimp, and I mean just completely just allow James Brown to take over. That guy's going to be missed, man. 43 years old, gone way too soon. And I posted on social media, I said it's crazy. We lost, well, a lot of people considered the next coming of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant early in the year. And we lost a guy who was considered to be the next Denzel Washington later on in the year. And it's crazy because, those 2 guys would have made an impact, for the culture, for African Americans, man. You talk about, Kobe Bryant and what he meant to just the world in general. And it was the same way with Chadwick Boseman, because he actually crossed over. He played some famous African-American roles, but he crossed over when he became King T'Challa in the Black Panther. He crossed over. So there's one thing that is really bothering me, and I feel like the media needs to stop it. I'm saying stop it right now. They're calling him a black superhero. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't consider Chadwick Boseman, when he played King T'Challa, a black superhero. He was a damn hero. He was a superhero. That's who he was. Okay, because even though we as black people, if you have sons or you have daughters, the whole Wakanda experience showed them a different perspective than they probably would normally see when it comes to African-American roles. That is true. A young boy watching Chadwick Boseman play King T'Challa in the Black Panther, yeah, he probably think to himself, I can be a superhero too. But there's so many people around the world. I mean, that movie grossed over $1 billion. So he was a superhero to those people too. He was a superhero to the Asians. He was a superhero to the Hispanic community, the white community. This guy was a superhero. And I feel like we got to be very careful. Look, I understand he is black and he was a superhero, but we got to be very careful to, minimize the impact that Chadwick Boseman had when he played that role. So I get it. I understand it. But he was a superhero to me. And I'm not looking at his color. He was a superhero. He was a real, true superhero come to life. And it just was an extra cherry on top at the fact that he actually looked like me. But I mean, I actually literally got off the stream. We were talking after we actually did the podcast. I'm talking the podcast I did last night, and I was just so bummed out at the fact that Chadwick Boseman died. I mean, honestly, I just had to wrap it up, man. You know what I'm saying? It was just 2020 to me had just been one hell of an experience. Okay, I mean, it just seemed like it's just one tragedy after another. Starting with the death of David Stern, if you're a basketball fan, the death of Kobe Bryant and Gianna, and 9 passengers on aboard that helicopter. Then we had the coronavirus, you know what I'm saying? Then people lost their jobs. And then we had like all of these different situations that happened with Ahmaud Arbery and Jacob Blake and, George Floyd. Like, it just seems like it has just been one disappointment after another. And, I'm just ready for 2020 to be over. Honestly, I'm just ready for it to be over. And yes, there are some bright spots, in 2020. Some things have happened, I'm pretty sure. Some people can look at some silver linings in these dark clouds, but just the impact of what 2020 is, man, it just has been one of the worst years, man, I can just remember. And I was talking to my wife before, she went off to work today. Shouts out to my wife. She's actually at work right now as I make this podcast. But we were just talking about, is 2020 the worst, because we were discussing Chadwick Boseman and the death, in his death. And she was like, well, let's not just say 2020 is just, a horrible year. There are some good things that happen. I mean, we got married, saying a few weeks ago, like things like that. Like those are positives, but just the impact of the people that we lost. I mean, I feel like we're going to be affected by their loss for years. The only thing I can really think about it, and the crazy thing about it is the death of Michael Jackson. You know what I'm saying? Like Michael Jackson, his death was one of those that kind of stand out. And I feel like people still just can't believe, like I feel like these are the moments that we are never going to forget as long as we live, regardless, when we move from the year 2020, we're still going to remember those moments. And man, I'm just so bummed out, folks. I'm just bummed out. I just don't know how to feel right now, because I really did think very highly of Chadwick Boseman, and it's unfortunate, man. The world lost something that I don't feel like can be replaced. I feel like this guy was one of those guys that we really needed. He was necessary in this world. And sometimes life is not fair. Sometimes we lose some of the best people in the world, you know what I'm saying, and they leave us so soon. But sometimes I feel like that's the way God plans things. That's the way he does them. He put people in our life for a short period of time for us to recognize their greatness, and also be able to, when they leave here, we're able to look at those people for the works that they did. And Chadwick Boseman, Kobe Bryant, among so many others, have really touched our lives. So rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman. My heart goes out to his wife and his family, that's dealing with this tough time. And, may God bless you all during this time of bereavement. We move on to the NBA. The NBA, we already know they had a boycott a couple of days ago. They're actually going to play a playoff game, but a couple of days ago, we didn't know if they were going to play a playoff game. The Milwaukee Bucks actually started the whole boycott by not coming out to play the Orlando Magic. I think on Thursday, they decided to stay inside the locker room and postpone the game. They were willing to forfeit the game in order for them to bring attention to the shooting of Jacob Blake. He was shot 7 times in Kenosha, Wisconsin, by a police officer. If you watch the video, you see Jacob Blake walk into his car, and a police officer shot him in the back 7 times. I mean, these situations keep happening over and over again, and we're steady trying to find solutions. We're steady trying to find solutions to these problems. What is really going on in this world? What is really happening in this world, man? Why is it that we keep on seeing these videos of guys getting shot in the back, African-American guys, getting gunned down at the hands of the police? What is really going on? Like, why is it that, police officers just can't understand that you just cannot shoot and kill unarmed African Americans? I mean, I just don't get it. Part of me does get it. Part of me don't get it. The part that gets it is the fact that I feel like they're afraid. Look, I feel like a lot of police officers are afraid of black people. Yeah, I said it. I just feel like they're afraid of black people because they don't understand black people. And I just don't think that we understand each other too. It's not just the fact about police officers not understanding black people. Black people don't understand white people. White people don't understand Hispanic people. Hispanic people don't understand white people, and vice versa, because we are not in the same communities in most cases, and we are not trying to have conversations. We find out about one another through the media. We find out through one another through movies and cinema. That is how we find out about one another. We do not talk to one another about each other's problems and what people's gripes are when it comes to their culture. Like, if you look at a black person, 9 times out of 10, they probably have very little interaction with someone of the opposite race. White people, the same way. And they allow outside influence to tell them the narrative. When you're going into these communities, if you're a cop, you already made up in your mind, if you're staying in this community, 9 times out of 10, you're probably a bad person. Not all cops I'm talking to right now, but there's a stigma in certain areas that you live. Growing up in New Orleans, there was a stigma about the Desire projects. You know what I'm saying? I live close to the Desire projects. There was a stigma about the Florida project and Press Park. You know what I'm saying? Right across the street from the high school I went to, George Washington Carver High School. They had stigmas about these places. If you were found in these places, you were labeled. There was no doubt about it. And I know there are some great people that came out of these places, man. Press Park, Florida, the Desire. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are the places that I know for a fact there were some great people came out of there, but they suffered because of you probably had some people out there that weren't doing the right things. So the police profiled them. I can't tell you how many times, I'm walking home from school and the police just pull up, or whatever like that and ask me where I'm going. I mean, these things happen, and that's the thing. We need to start having conversations. We cannot just feel like we just have the whole open and shut case on the communities, and I get it. There are some bad apples in these communities. And for that, I feel like that's the reason why the police actually act that way towards African Americans. But I don't want to be profiled. I don't want to be profiled. I don't want to be one of those people that get arrested or shot down because I fit the description of somebody that looks like they're going to break the law. I mean, it doesn't feel good. I remember when I first came to South Carolina, some of you probably heard me tell this story, but I rolled up to the light place to get my lights turned on, right? So I get in there, and at the time, I got a Mississippi driver's license, and the lady asked me, for that information. I gave her my driver's license after I filled out the application to get my lights on. And then all of a sudden, she asked me to go sit down, right? Go sit down. I'm not thinking anything of it. Then a few minutes later, 4 police officers come into the light place. And all of a sudden, they just start asking me questions like, who are you? Where are you from? And I'm like, well, I just moved here. I just came up here to get my lights turned on. And he was like, well, give me your ID. But I looked in his hand and I noticed there was a paper that had my driver's license on there. It was a copy of my driver's license. I said, well, you know who I am because you got a picture of my driver's license in your hand. So he turns around and tells me, he says, we're going to find out who you are. And the reason why this happened to me was because the lady that was behind the glass who took my information, she mistakenly thought that I was a guy that actually robbed a bank in a city called Conway, South Carolina, a couple of days ago. And I guess the guy was on a run. And on my driver's license at the time, I had dreadlocks, which I don't have anymore. And a guy who robbed the bank had dreadlocks. But I mean, it's needless to say that I wasn't the guy. So she just apologized. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But I just think about that in my mind. At the time, I didn't because I was so focused on trying to get my lights turned on. I didn't really think about it. But I think about that from time to time now. It's like, dang. What would have happened if those guys would have really thought that I was the guy that robbed the bank? And they would have came up in their guns a-blazing, and I really don't know what the hell was going on. I could have lost my life that day. And I can't help but to feel embarrassed and cheap. And just think about the fact that what if I would have died that day? What if, what if my life would have been extinguished because somebody mistakenly thought that I was a guy that robbed the bank? But these are countless stories that are being told in the Black community. And I get it, white folks. I get it. I get it. You don't want to hear this. Like, oh, man, I don't want to hear this. Like, so much progress has been taking place. So much progress. Yes, they had progress that happened. I'm not going to say that they didn't. A lot had changed since Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act. A lot has happened. But at the same time, man, we cannot pretend like people aren't being profiled. We cannot pretend like the police think that they have the full story on African Americans. We cannot pretend like some of the stories that you all read about African Americans don't cause you to walk on the opposite side of the street when you see an African American, or clutch your purse a little tighter, or if you're a guy, clutch your woman a little tighter. But we have to start having these conversations, man. We got to stop being afraid to feel uncomfortable. We feel so uncomfortable around each other. We feel so uncomfortable because we feel like, well, if I start to really tell this person how I feel, then they are going to want to jump on me, or they're going to label me. We got to start having these conversations, and we got to stop being afraid to have these conversations. We got to stop being afraid to tell people how we really feel. And we need to completely undress ourselves in order for us to have these conversations and see where each other is coming from. But as long as we continuously not have these conversations, as long as we continuously act as if one person is complaining and the other person is right, or you all have everything and you're acting like you have nothing, as long as we continuously feel this way, we're going to continue having the Jacob Blakes and the George Floyds and the Ahmaud Arbery's. We're going to continue to have these issues. We cannot solve these problems if we don't step up and start having these conversations. And I once again, back to the NBA, I applaud these players. I applaud Giannis, George Hill, the rest of the Milwaukee Bucks basketball team, Middleton. I applaud LeBron James for being a guy who takes his star power and takes it in order for him to create change in the community, for building a school, the I Promise school out there in Akron. I applaud him for that. I applaud people like Damian Lillard. I applaud people like Avery Bradley, who decided not to go into Orlando because he wanted to fight for some of the issues that are going on. I applaud these guys. I applaud the NFL for making videos and bringing attention to it. Some people in particular, New Orleans Saint Malcolm Jenkins, Demario Davis, Benjamin Watson. I applaud those guys. I mean, but to me, it's not really their responsibility. It's not really their responsibility in order to create change. They can use their platform to bring things to light. I get it. But I feel like we need to start holding these politicians accountable. And I'm not just talking about the president of the United States. I get it. We don't like Donald Trump. In some cases, some of us love Donald Trump. When Obama was in office, some of us liked Obama, some of us didn't like Obama. But a lot of people don't understand that the president only has so much power. What we really need to be looking at is some of these politicians that have been career politicians and have been in DC for 30 plus years and have done absolutely nothing to create change in the community. For the people that we just constantly vote for due to nostalgia acts. I think about people like, no disrespect to them, but people like Benny Thompson, who've been in Congress for I don't know how long. I mean, I think since like the early 90s. People like, people like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, people like that who have been around forever. And now, all of a sudden they want to come up here and act like they really understand and are concerned about what's going on in these communities. Well, I would say to you that you had ample opportunities to create change in these communities. You had opportunities to go out here and really go hard in the paint for these communities. But what you did was you chose to be a career politician and toe the line. Maybe somebody promised you something, or maybe you just had a fear of possibly not being reelected. But we cannot live our life in fear. We cannot live our life in fear. We cannot go out here and think that we are going to live up to all of our potential being afraid. We have to be fearless. And I feel like a lot of politicians are not fearless. They are panders. They pander to us. They tell us what we want to hear in order to get our vote. They'll parade our favorite actor or our favorite recording artist. They'll parade them out there in order for us to be like, oh man, you know what? Man, I seen Cardi B talking to him. Oh, I seen Beyonce talking to him. Oh, I seen Jay-Z talking to him. They cling to our heartstrings, and they cling to our emotions, and they try to get our vote. But in reality, they don't give a damn about us. And like I said, I'm not, you know what I'm saying, so much trying to be right or left or anything like that. I'm just telling you the truth. These people that have been on the floor, the ones that are arguing about different bills in order to turn those bills into laws, these people had the opportunity to create better gun control. They had opportunities to bring jobs into our communities. They had opportunities to make sure that police relationships with communities could be better. But they chose not to focus on those things. And let's not pretend like these things just occurred. It just didn't start with Trayvon Martin. I mean, we can go back to Rodney King. If you want to go back to, even further, we can go back to, to the days of the Civil Rights Movement, when John Lewis was getting his head cracked in for trying to board a bus and trying to integrate the Greyhound bus systems. This has been going on for I don't know how long. And we actually acting as if these people didn't have the opportunities to do it. And I'm sorry, I cannot accept, I want to make this happen, but the people on the other aisle are stopping me from doing that. Well, if you know that's the case and you've been in there for 30 years, then why are you building your campaigns on those type of promises if you know that you have the opposition is going to stop you from achieving that particular goal that you're setting out? So honestly, you're telling people what they want to hear in order for you to get it elected. And we really need to start looking at this, folks. We really need to start looking at these politicians that only put signs in our front yard, and that's the reason why we vote for them. They don't do anything for us except put their signs in our communities, so when you go to the polls, their name will be on your mind, so you can just press the button in order for them to be reelected. Let's really start taking responsibility for what's going on in our communities. Let's really start holding these politicians accountable and make them live up to the promises that they're giving us. Because if we don't, then we're bringing the same people back in there that are going to create the same problems for us. Let's stop with the career politicians. Let's cut it out. And that's why I am really pushing for term limits. That is what I really want. I want term limits in Congress. That is what I want. The House and the Senate, they need term limits. They need term limits, because if you have term limits, I mean, it's least likely that you can be susceptible to accepting bribes from lobbyists. So you can filibuster the hell out of something on the floor in order to keep that lobbyist in place, to keep his business in place, to keep him from having to be held accountable for some of the things that he is causing. He is causing hardship in these communities. And these people are taking kickbacks. So if we can have like 4 to 8 years when it comes to Congress, House and the Senate and stuff like that, if we can do that, then maybe we'll have the change that we're looking for. Let's hold these folks accountable. Because sometimes I feel like we're looking at the wrong person. Sometimes I feel like we're looking at the wrong people when we really need to be looking at the other people. And sometimes they push that person that we feel like we need to be looking at, they put them in the middle of the floor and have them being scrutinized and made as public enemy number one, when they really behind the scenes pulling the strings. That's just my humble opinion about it. Let's start holding these folks accountable, folks. But once again, I applaud the NBA for taking a stand, using that platform. Also, the WNBA. I don't feel like the WNBA gets credit. I don't feel like they get the credit they deserve, because those women have really been out there on the front lines way before the NBA or the NFL even got involved. We see the Washington Mystic basketball team. They actually got off the plane, and each player had a letter to represent the name Jacob Blake. They also put like 7 holes in the back of their t-shirts in red, to symbolize, the Jacob Blake man shot 7 times. So shouts out to the WNBA, man. They really on the front line as well. I understand that the NBA is more popular than the WNBA, and I understand that the NBA is going to get more press. But let's not pretend like the WNBA is not going hard, just as hard as the NBA. We know about the protests that happened. We know about the guy with the AR-15 who came to Kenosha, Wisconsin during a protest and killed 2 people and severely wounded 1. And we see the video of him actually walking past the police as they rolled through the scene in armored trucks, and he just walked right past them and went home, and they arrested him the next day. Okay, they arrested him. So, I mean, I guess we got to give him credit for that. But the crazy thing about it is, as he was walking off, everybody was screaming to the police, that's the guy who did it. That's the guy who you need to be focusing on. This is the guy that did all this stuff to us. You know what I'm saying? This is a guy that shot down 2 people, and they didn't even listen. They got this meme that goes around. It's like this animated portrait of a black guy being arrested by the police, and the police has his knee on the back of the black guy. And you see the white guy, with camo on, with an AR-15 on his back. And you see him just slowly just walking past the police, and the police just gives him the salute like, hey, how you doing? In other words, like, you so focused on this black guy thinking he's going to commit a crime. The real guy that's about to do some damage, you allowed to walk right past you. So this guy thought that he was a part of some type of invisible militia. I guess he started listening to some of the things that are going on. I feel like the news, they play a responsibility in this too. But this guy felt like he needed to go out there to go hard and protect businesses that could possibly be subject to looting. Okay, keep in mind that this guy doesn't own any of the businesses. He just took it. He just did it out of the kindness of his heart. But there's a problem. And the problem is that people are afraid of black people. White people are afraid of black people. Police officers are afraid of black people. That's just what it is. And the fact that they don't look at the white community as a threat. They don't look at them as a threat, because if they did, then you think this guy walking down the street in an AR with an AR-15, do you think he would have been able to go home? And let's not act like, well, it was dark. Well, let's not pretend like these boys didn't have them big, bright ass LED lights on the front of them tanks. Okay. I mean, Ray Charles, may he rest in peace. Stevie Wonder could have seen that these guys, that the guy had, had an AR-15, and everybody was screaming that this guy was the one that caused the damage. But, and also the police officer, the chief of police, who blaming the people that were out there at the protest, said that they were out there past curfew. And if they weren't out there past curfew, then this wouldn't have happened. We don't need that type of energy. We don't need that type of energy going on right now. The fact is, these people felt like they needed to protest, and people are tired. They are tired of dealing with these situations. They are tired of having to go to vigils. They're tired of hearing these same stories over and over again. And you all just want to put up there, oh, we need a curfew is intact. Well, at this particular point, F your curfew. That's the way people feel. Forget your curfew. Forget what you're telling me right now. Why should I listen to what you're saying when you're not listening to what I'm saying? How come I got to respect your feelings when you're not respecting mine? To blame people for being out, trying to take a stand. And I'm not talking about everybody that's out there. You have people out there that were trying to take advantage of the process, of the protest. They try to use it to gain something for themselves. I'm not talking about them, because we all know that the national media likes to shed light on the people that are out there throwing glass and trying to steal things. But there are way more people out there that are protesting peacefully than people that are rioting. And the thing about it is, which is absolutely crazy. And this, I just thought about this. People that watch the news, right? They watch the news and they focus solely on the people that are rioting and not the people that's people protesting. And you'll say, man, these people out here, they're protesting peacefully. They're protesting peacefully. Well, what about the people that's rioting? That's, you know what I'm saying? When they out there, they rioting, they causing trouble. How is it that you can fix your lips to say, forget about the fact that they have good people out there? It outshadows that because of the people that's rioting. But you say, oh, there's good policemen out there. There are good policemen out here that are really doing their job. And you completely negate the fact that people are paying attention to the ones that are bad. And they're saying that the bad ones out there are making the good ones look bad. So how on one hand you can understand, oh man, we ain't trying to hear what you're talking about. But at the same time, you want to take up for the police department. How? How is that? That's the biggest hypocrisy I've ever heard in my entire life. So you're willing, the thing is, you're willing to understand that, okay, there are some bad cops out there, but there are better good cops. There are more good cops than bad cops. But you're not understanding that there are more positive people out there that are peaceful protesting over people that's rioting. How in the hell is that possible? I'll tell you why. Because people don't want to recognize the truth. People don't want to look at themselves in the mirror. People do not want to understand other people's feelings because it will cause them to have to do some soul searching. And people don't want to do that because the things that they hold near and dear to their heart, the values that they hold near and dear to their heart would have to be questioned. And we don't like to be questioned at all, right? We don't want to be questioned at all. We want to be right. We want to be the most correct person in the room. We want to be able to tell all of our friends that wasn't a part of that social media back and forth that I owned them that day. That's what we want. But we need to start shutting up and listening to one another. That's what's going to solve these problems. We need to shut up and listen to one another. And if we walk away from the conversation like, well, I don't think me and this person will be on the same page, but at least you understand that. I feel like there's very little communication going on between people that feel different from one another. Just think about this. I mean, most of the time when you're on social media, you might make a point, then people might go back and forth with you. They probably have a conversation with you. Then all of a sudden, you get to a point where you're just tired of writing each other, going back and forth. And you find yourself just trying to get the last word. And you leave that conversation like, well, what happened? Well, this person said this and that to me. And then it's so broken up because you're so focused on trying to be correct and trying to own that person that day. That's not going to get us nowhere, folks. If you leave a conversation and you don't remember the conversation that you had, if you don't understand the person's feelings that you're having a conversation with, then you just wasted 10, 15, 20 minutes of your time. 20 minutes of your life, you could have been doing something else with your life. We're not going to solve any problems if we don't listen. So let's start listening to one another. Let's start respecting one another. Let's start really leaving, our personal feelings, leaving our personal feelings to the side. Let's put them to the side and start focusing on the things that are important to us, which is peace, which is unity, which it should be. I don't know about a lot of people, but to me, I just want peace and I want to be respected. That's what I want. But folks, I want to say thank you for checking out the Unapologetic podcast. And I really do appreciate your time for those that checked it out. And hopefully, around this time, 2021, we're talking about more positive things. Once again, rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman. Shouts out to his family, man. May they find peace in this time of tragedy. And for all the people that were affected by it, man. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that were fans of Chadwick Boseman. And, I mean, hopefully, what I'm saying, we find peace and just remember the moments that he left with us, the happiness that he gave to us, the pride that he gave to us. This has been an Unapologetic podcast. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com, search Unapologetic Podcast, facebook.com, search Unapologetic Podcast, and follow the Facebook page. And also episodes are available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and AnchorFM.com. Till next time, all I got to say is we glow.